Hello, I am Sara Neff. I am the head of sustainability for Lendlease in the Americas. In the Americas, Lendlease is 5 business units. We are a pure construction business, about $3 billion a year. We are also a sort of traditional investment management development platform, raise money with JV partners, and build mostly multifamily to operate in the long term. Also, we have a growing life science fund. We are also the largest operators of military housing. We have about 40,000 military homes, and all of the military's hotels under me is the Lendlease Foundation. And we also have a very large project with Google in the Bay Area. So the participation in GRESB has just exploded since its launch. GRESB is the industry sort of gold standard for measuring the sustainability performance of real estate companies. This was born out of a need because a lot of the other sort of global disclosures, Carbon Disclosure Project, Dow Jones Sustainability Index are fantastic, but they really didn't have real estate in mind. It was a little bit of a square peg round hole. But clearly, real estate as 40% of carbon emissions was very important to assess the environmental, social, and governance impacts of real estate itself. And GRESB really filled that need, which is why you see such adoption of it in the market. The pandemic years did make it much more challenging to interpret usage data. It really depended on asset type. So, for example, office, if you owned office buildings, they were not occupied. If you owned multifamily like Lendlease did, they were way more occupied as people worked from home. If you had life science, a lot of those folks were essential, but not always. So that was confusing. Industrial, kind of the same, some essential, some not. So yes, it made it difficult. I will say one of the things we learned is that buildings are not designed to not have occupants. And even if you have 5% occupancy, you're not using only 5% of the energy that the building usually uses. Really what we were seeing in the market for vacant properties is something around a 40% reduction for a fully vacant building. And that really just demonstrates that buildings aren't designed to fully ramp up and down. They weren't designed with the pandemic in mind. Multifamily, sort of the opposite. We had to do more. Our residents were there using energy, using water, using it all day and all night. And so we definitely saw usage, increase, both energy and water in the multifamily portfolios. Investors are addressing transition risk in a number of ways, but the first thing they want to do is just ask a company if they understand what their transition risk is. And that can take many forms. Technology risk. Are your building systems outdated? Or are they all going to need to be upgraded? Policy risk. For example, for those of us who own property in New York, which Lendlease does, are subject to what's called Local Law 97, the most aggressive climate change legislation around real estate in a city in the world, as far as I know. Those buildings, if they're non-compliant, if they're emitting too much carbon per square foot, they're going to have enormous exposure to fines, right? That's a major transition risk. And so what investors want us to know is, have we assessed our transition risks? Do we understand? Are we going to have issues with labor? Are we going to have issues with technology, with policy, with other regulation? Are we going to be able to get our permits where we need to? That kind of thing. And then they want us, at least internally, to know what the dollar value is of those risks. So it's a very emerging part of understanding your climate change resilience. That really started with understanding your physical risk. Are you at risk of fire? Are you at risk of water scarcity? Are you at risk of flooding? And those are all very important to understand. But the transition risk is a critical piece of it, because if you can, you might not have risks of any of those physical risks for a building, say in New York, but if you're going to be subject to hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines, there's obviously transitional climate change risks that you're exposed to. There's no challenges at all. I don't understand why we're asking this question. Now, there's a lot of challenges. Data collection continues to be challenging. It's just hard to measure data from a building. It doesn't seem like it should be hard, but it is. For example, if the leasing hasn't been set up so that the landlord gets the utility bill, you're having to request that from the tenant. That's difficult. A green lease can kind of force that, but it can still be like pulling teeth. It can get difficult. There are tenants out there who just refuse to provide that data. That's difficult. Understanding your own meters. So we have a wonderful property, but it's many buildings on a campus. And just interpreting the meter data and knowing what goes where, even when we control everything, that's difficult. Meters break and or get shut off as a tenant moves in and out, and staying on top of it. And then and then water data is confusing. Some jurisdictions are using CCF, some are using gallons, some are using kilogallons, and making sure you have all the units. And also, if you own international property, getting anything to sort of translate to make sure you're not making some sort of, cubic meters to cubic, feet issue can be difficult. So there's a lot of challenges with data. The other thing that's challenging is just the time. We spend a lot of our time gathering this data, making sure the data looks accurate, auditing the data, getting an external auditor to sign off on the data. We would really like to spend that time actually driving down the carbon footprints of our buildings. So we really applaud the efforts of things like the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standards Board, which is trying to streamline reporting so that while we completely believe in the importance of transparency, we can make that process more efficient and then spend more of our time really improving the environmental outcomes of our buildings. To learn more about our sustainability programs, and specifically our Mission Zero goals, Lendlease has the most aggressive sustainability goals in real estate to be Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon neutral by 2025, but even more aggressively to be absolute zero across every scope, Scopes 1, 2, and 3 by 2040, no offsets. To learn more about that, please see our website. The link will be below.